Welcome back in one of the Bears Football Plays YouTube channel. Today is Wednesday, November 5th. Mac is back Tuesday night. Made a little bit of a short on Miami, Ohio with the points and money line. Hopefully they come out against Ohio and dominate them. Ohio's been hit or miss so far this season. They weren't very good in non-conference. Miami, Ohio got rocked in non-conference, but they played a lot of tough opponents, which is why I think Miami, Ohio every year after they get out of non-conference is so good in the MAC because they've been playing really good competition. Then they go to the MAC and they're like, well, these teams are pretty easy compared to what we've been playing. So I think they will, play well tonight going up against Ohio. Not a winning weekend for us. 4-5 on the game picks, 1-1 on the player props. Took out Minnesota because we didn't have a player prop in that game, the running back. But let's talk about the games. Vanderbilt +3 is a wash. Unbelievable cover by Vanderbilt. Texas dominated that game all three quarters beside the fourth, and then Vanderbilt with the chance to get the onside kick. They had three guys touch it. Nobody could get on the ball, so that's a push. Loser, Navy against North Texas. Tough one to lose whenever North Texas had 21 points in the first quarter. Thought that was going to go well over. Florida +7.5 got a lucky break with Stockton taking a knee at the 2. But we also had a tough loss with Western Michigan taking a knee on the 2. So that one, a little bit of give, a little bit of take on that one. ECU Temple over. That one was easy. That was a winner. Mississippi State +4.5. Had a drive late in the game to beat Arkansas. That game was crazy as well. Blake Shapen goes out with basically a concussion. They go back in the medical tent after a quarter of the backup being in there. They get him a new brain to come back out in the field. He plays the last drive, gets it done for Mississippi State. Kansas State played tough against Texas Tech in the first half, then gets rocked in the second half. Tennessee OU over 55. Pretty. It felt like it was going to be easy in the first 5-10 minutes, and then it was an absolute battle the rest of the way. Tennessee -3 to not win, and then Georgia Tech loses outright. Georgia Tech's been flirting with losing 4 or 5 straight weeks, and it finally bit them in the ass. NC State gets the job done, beating Georgia Tech. So 4-5 of the game picks. One player prop win was Diego Pavia, anytime touchdown. Player prop loss was Lenore Sellers, who I think ended with negative rushing yards because for some reason he kept taking 13-yard sacks. That's just what he loved to do. So 1-1 the player props, and the Minnesota game obviously was a wash because I told you we weren't going to be betting it if the starting running back from Minnesota did not play, and that's what happened. I think Minnesota won that game, though, by 3, so it would have been a wash either way. So 5-6 in the day. Let's talk about the best conference in college football. We have MAC back on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Is the best part. Well, it used to be the best part of college football, but now ESPN and Disney and YouTube make you buy the $30 package a month for ESPN and ESPN2. So now we're just $30 out a month, but we're still going to be watching MAC football. Kent State going up against Ball State will be the game. I'm looking at both these teams' schedules. I'm not going to pretend like I've watched both these teams a lot this year. I did watch Kent State going up against Bowling Green last week. They had a really good trick play. Wide receiver threw a touchdown to really spark Kent State last week going up against Bowling Green. They had 3 points in that game, and then they came all the way back late in the third quarter, into the fourth quarter. The defense played well against Bowling Green, a game that Kent State had no business of winning. They found a way to win that game, 24-21. Now they're coming into a Ball State here on the road. Ball State typically a tough place to play in MAC over the last several years. Offensively, both these teams are dreadful. I mean, you're not going to find a lot of great offensive talent on the field for either side. Kent State defense has been giving up a ton of points this season, but let me talk about the non-conference. Kent State started off with a win. Then they played Texas Tech, top 25. Now they're top 5, or I guess top 10. Florida State at the time was number 7, and Oklahoma at the time was number 5. They lost those games 62-14, 44-0, and 66-10. So defensively, yeah, the stats are really bad for Kent State. Going up against other teams in the MAC conference, they beat UMass, who does not have a win this season. They beat them 42-6. Pretty good defensive effort. They lost to Toledo, which is one of the top dogs in the MAC conference, 45-10. What are you going to do? Toledo's good. Miami, Ohio, I think Toledo or Miami, Ohio, or maybe Miami, Ohio, or Toledo will probably win the MAC. And then Bowling Green, who was supposed to be up in the at least top tier of the MAC conference. They're supposed to be a pretty good team in the MAC conference this season. down 21-3, and then they win that game 24-21. So the defense has been playing better against some of the lower to mid-tier teams in the MAC conference. And when we talk about low-tier teams in the MAC conference, especially offensively, Ball State's at the very, very, very bottom. They can't move the ball through the air. They can run the ball, but they have less than 1,000 yards passing on the season. Kent State's sitting at 1,200. I'm not. This isn't me putting out a case for Kent State offensively, but if we're looking at just the numbers, Ball State offensively is the worst team in the MAC conference by a pretty wide margin. Looking at Ball State's non-conference schedule, 0 top 25 teams that they played. That's a huge thing here, which is why I'm taking Kent State plus 1.5. They're coming off a loss against NIU, 21-17 or 21-7. 7 points in the last game. They haven't been able to get it going. They beat Akron. They got their doors kicked in by Western Michigan 42-0. Western Michigan, not the best offensive team. They've got a pretty good defense, though. Ball State's not going to be able to get anything going in this game. And if I'm being honest, this is going to be one of those games that you want to just take a fork and just put it through your eyeball. Like, I feel like that's going to be one of these games where it's going to be 7-6 with like 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden you look up and it's like, why is the score 20-24 and one of these teams going on a game-winning drive? That's just what MAC does. It brings the best out of these teams. But look at the points I'm making here. Kent State, I talked about it. The momentum, they had the shocking win against Bowling Green. They scored 17 points in the third and fourth quarter, but really it was basically 17 minutes of football from the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter. Ball State struggling to move the ball down the field. I've got some numbers for their quarterback, Kelly. He hasn't had 1,000 passing yards yet this season, which is going to be a big thing. And Kent State finally broke through with some big plays last week. They had a couple trick plays that they were able to move the ball through the air. And the Ball State this season defensively, they've been okay. They're not great defensively. Kent State, like I said, I told you the numbers for Kent State defensively. They're not great, but I also told you that they played 3 top 10 teams basically at the time and gave up all those points. So defensive numbers on paper are not what they're probably going to play like in this game against a Ball State team who probably will definitely be the worst offensive team that they play so far on this season. So I really think the difference in this one is going to be run-heavy State. That's what I'm going to call Ball State. They're going to want to run the ball basically every single play. They typically don't take shots down the field. Don't have a receiver over 300 yards this season. Ball State's going to want to run. Kent State, if you can find a way to play man on the outside with the 2 receivers, that can plug the box, make them get in long 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 situations, I think Kent State can run the score up. I know Kent State's not good offensively. Ball State also not good offensively. Neither one of these defenses, in my opinion, very good. But I do think Kent State has more playmakers on the field with their quarterback, Shields, and with one of the receivers, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. Cade Walford is a receiver for Kent State that we're going to take as a player prop. So let's just get right into that player prop. Over the 45.5 receiving yards. Kent State, again, I know I keep putting this point down. I'm not making a case for the Kent State offense. I know that they're not a good offensive team. But whenever we look at the players on the field for both sides, Wofford has been playing better over the last several games, and he's been, getting a good connection with Drew Shields, and they were able to find themselves on a couple long plays against Bowling Green. So I'm going to take his over 45.5 receiving. I think a more reliable play would be one of Ball State's running backs to go over the total because, again, numbers are skewed this season for Kent State, but they're giving up 200-plus rushing yards on the ground per game, which they played 3 top 10 teams, basically. They were up by 40-plus points in basically the second quarter. Of course, those teams are going to run all over them, try to kill that clock. So I just think the stats are a little bit skewed for Kent State. I think they're better on the defensive side than what the numbers are saying, and I know they're the better offense in this game. Getting a 1.5 feels lucky. So Kent State plus 1.5, and then Gabe Wofford over the 45.5. We will have I will have NBA college basketball on Friday. I believe, yes, I think Friday is the day that Kansas plays North Carolina, and then we've got a couple decent NBA matchups as well. So we're going to have NBA and college basketball back on Friday. I will most likely make a video every single day for the NBA, just like I did last year, starting on Friday. And for college basketball, I'll probably make a video every day as well. I don't want a big game hunt in college basketball because it is truly college football and college basketball are, in my opinion, the two best sports to watch because, you got all these kids carrying, and it just means more in college, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll have NBA and college basketball, and then obviously NCAA football and NFL. So look for 4 videos this weekend. It's going to be fun. Guys, going to do it for the NCAA football picks and props for Wednesday, November 5th slate of games. If you guys enjoyed the content, please drop a video, and thanks for watching.